Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside Arsenal Extra Time, the show where myself and James Benge from CBS will get together and discuss all things Arsenal, look back on what's been a very good week in the Champions League. We'll look ahead to the January transfer window, which is fast approaching. Look ahead to Brighton, of course, just 3 days away from that big game in the Premier League as Arsenal look to bounce back from the defeat at Aston Villa last weekend. As usual, joined by James Benge. How you doing, James? Looking very Christmassy with the Christmas tree set up behind you there.
I am. It was Hannah, my partner, sort of said when I've been recording videos for CBS, she sort of like, "Have you got the Christmas tree in the background?" She spent so much time putting up those lights and all that, and I said, "Oh no!" So I've been instructed that I need to get the Christmas tree in the background, but it does look very good. Little star on the top. I was allowed to buy that. I can't point at it, but there you go. Yes, Christmas decoration is really not my strong point. I'm much too tacky for it.
Very nice, but it's a far better backdrop than what I have of just a bare marked wall with nothing behind it. Which, when I do move house, and I am going to move house at some point, and I promise I'm going to have a nice office stroke studio. It's going to look a hell of a lot better than this behind me at some point.
Can you imagine when you were taking your NCTJ or getting your first journalism qualifications that you would have really needed to think about the studio setup at your home and how it would reflect on you? I mean, between COVID and everything, it sort of feels like nowadays, like, our laptops are sort of, it's not about writing anymore. It's about making a good shot for YouTube and all that.
But it certainly is for me. It's for me now. It's a world away from when I first started 20 years ago. It has to be said, but got to move with the times, haven't you? And it's certainly a lot of fun doing things like this. And it's been a fun week this week, aside from obviously Aston Villa at the weekend. But I really enjoyed the PSV game in midweek. I didn't think I was going to. It was the most classic of dead rubbers, wasn't it? And I thought, what's going to happen? This is going to be. I thought Arsenal were going to lose, and I thought Arsenal were going to lose quite heavily. And they didn't. I thought they got a very good point, but it was quite a fun game, actually. I did enjoy it. Did you catch it? Did you watch it?
I did, or I did until Reece Nelson and Eddie Nketiah scored, and then you will have got this text from me about do you think that Carlos Vela constitutes an academy graduate?
Oh yes, I did. Yes,
because I thought, well, wow, actually two actual Hale End graduates, not young Arsenal players, not people that have been given their first professional chance at Arsenal, but two players from the academy. It actually must be a fair while since that happened. But I was like, it'll be sort of Wilshere assisting Cesc or vice versa. Nope. I have checked, and I spent, literally straight after the goal went in, I spent a very long time going back through Arsenal Wikipedia pages to get the last time two Arsenal academy players one had assisted the other in the European Cup. And you have to go all the way back to 1991 when David Rocastle tees up Kevin Campbell.
Which I mean, Benfica 1-1.
Quite amazing, really, when you think so many players have come through Arsenal's academy, but actually it gives you a sense maybe of how special this era is, that we're in a position where there are two academy players on the pitch, well, more as well, on the pitch, scoring and providing for each other. That's not normal.
I was trying to go to that game in Benfica. My dad went without me. He didn't take me. No. It was a school night, obviously, and he didn't take me. He went by himself to the Stadium of Light and saw that 1-1 draw. Did you go back and watch that goal?
Lovely goal.
David Rocastle's pass was so good. It was a really good finish by Campbell as well.
Kids that are watching this, you don't know, and you have to do the research. You don't know how good David Rocastle is. He was an amazing footballer.
Unbelievable. One of my favourite players of all time, Rocky. Just so good, so talented. And brilliant pass. Really good finish by Campbell as well, actually. 1-1. The second game, the second leg, I was at Highbury for it in the junior gunners section in front of I think we're over at the East Stand at that point, over in the front of the East Stand. And it was one of the first games that I've been properly heartbroken at when leaving, because I've played Austria Vienna in the first round, beat them 6-1 at Highbury. Smudger scored 4 goals. Brilliant. I loved his diving header in front of the North Bank in that game. And I thought, this is easy, this European football. And I convinced myself that Arsenal were going to go on and win the European Cup. And then they played Benfica, 1-1 over there. Good result. came back here and lost 3-1. Zayas scored 2 goals, went to extra time, scored 2 goals. I just remember I was so heartbroken leaving Highbury that night as a 10-year-old, having seen us lose in Europe for the first time in my life. And I was determined. I really wanted Arsenal to draw Benfica in like the next 4 European campaigns to get revenge on them for that. It was a heartbreaking night. But so I saw your tweet after that game and I thought, God, that is mad. Got to go all the way back to 1991 for that to happen.
I thought I was literally going through specific goals as well. I was like, you remember the Ashley Cole back post header against Dynamo Kiev? I was like, was that a Ray Parlour cross? Nope. You just can't believe that sort of Cesc and Wilshere didn't combine once, but actually those three are kind of the three major, and those four with Parlour are kind of the 4 major academy players that Arsenal have had play big minutes in the best competition, the European Cup, Champions League. Mm-hmm. And so now Arsenal have that many players from their own academy who could be playing this season. I mean, what a rich vein that the club struck a few years back around 2019.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. It was a good goal, actually, Eddie's goal, wasn't it? I was a really, really good play by Reece and lovely finish by Eddie. I was very, very impressed with that.
Yes, top. And Reece as well. When he gets the full 90, he tends to deliver for Arsenal, I find.
Good player. I do like Reece Nelson. We'll talk about him. Probably we're going to discuss a little bit the PSV game a little bit later on, and the lack of youth involvement, shall we say, which is certainly caused a lot of debate this week, and certainly caused a lot of debate on this channel. Actually, when I spoke about it yesterday, it's safe to say it divides opinion how Mikel sort of handled that game. So we'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about we'll look ahead to Brighton, of course, towards the end. Interesting game for Arsenal against a team that certainly like winning at the Emirates. Brighton. So we'll talk about that. I'll go through. Got some questions from viewers as well that we'll get involved with. But going to start today's show. I thought we'd spend a bit of time. We are now very, very close to the January transfer window, of course. And when I asked on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, for some questions, lots and lots of them, as you would imagine, were about the January transfer window, which just shows the interest that people are going to start sort of looking towards what Arsenal might well be doing in January, or what they might not be doing in January. So I thought we'd sit down and have a little bit of discussion about that, and what we think they might do, or what we think they probably should do, that sort of stuff. And so last January was an interesting one for Arsenal, wasn't it? It was, it was sort of leading up to it. It was all about Mudryk. It was all about Caicedo. And then suddenly it ended up being about Trossard, Jorginho and Jakub Kiwior. So it kind of ended in a very different fashion to how it started expectation-wise, I think. But on the whole, I think it was a very good January transfer window. When you look at it now, you look at what's gone on with Mudryk since he came to the Premier League with Chelsea, how Trossard's done, how Jorginho's done, how Kiwior's done. In fact, I think it was a really strong January transfer window for Arsenal. A window can always be difficult to do business in. You never quite know what's going to happen, how players are going to adapt, certainly at halfway stage of the season. But all 3 transfers, I think, have proved to be a success. I think if you're rating them right now, coming up to a year on from all 3 players, I think you're very hard pressed to say that they have not been a success, all 3 of those transfers. Of course, Arsenal were in a position when they were trying to go for the title, when it was a case of strengthening, trying to get themselves over the line, which they ultimately didn't. But they spent a lot of money in January last year, sort of totting up, what was it? It's about 70 million, 60 million, 70 million, I think, with about 30 for Trossard, about 25 for Kiwior, and then about 10 for Jorginho. When you look at this January, can you see any way that they're going to do something similar in terms of financial outlay to what they did last year? I'd be very, very surprised. I can't see it.
I like you, I would be very, very surprised. The way I would see it is it will be more reactive. I think a year ago, Arsenal were looking at this sort of saying, we might be a little short to win the title, and these guys might get us across the line for this season. Obviously, they thought those guys were Mudryk and Caicedo, but there was a real desire to sort of actually add a little bit of quality and a little bit of sparkle and try and get themselves across the line. The sense I get, and you always have to be careful, sort of like reading the tea leaves here, of no one, least of all Arsenal under Mikel Arteta, wants you to know what they're planning in January. But the sense I get is there's not a name sort of written in pencil in the same way that by this stage a year ago, Mudryk, we all had the sense something was going to happen here. I think if Arsenal can see business that's worth pushing forward, that they would do in the summer, they would do that. I don't really see that being at the striker position, but it might happen. Like, whether they feel like they're then there's the other side of it, which is, are they going to be a body light? And I know a lot of people in the questions on Twitter mentioned AFCON and the Asia Cup, and that's going to be sort of tight numerically. So, like, there's a possibility there of something that would be more of a Jorginho or a Kivior style signing. So I think of those as sort of real archetypes. Jorginho is the sort of, we need a solid veteran. We need someone now that could start a few games for us, but will then sort of go into the depths of the squad. Kivior's a long-term investment. I would think you might see a wide player in a Kivior mold would be what I would think is plausible, but not likely. I don't think anything is likely. And you could maybe see on loan a defender. I'm speculating on that one, but I mean, I just don't. To us, I don't see a huge amount happening. I'd be more surprised if they spend significant money on any player at all. I think they will sort of look to ride out January. But what do you think?
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the message that is coming out, is not to expect too much. You never know when it comes to that message, though, because we've all been in that position before when that is a message we've been receiving and then something else happens. I'll never forget the night before Arsenal signed Thomas Partey. We were at a match at the Emirates, and I can't remember who they were playing, but the message we all got that night was, don't expect much tomorrow. We're not going to be doing anything. And I remember getting home that night, not expecting anything, waking up that morning, doing a YouTube show that morning saying, the word we're getting from Arsenal is not to expect anything today. And then within a few hours, I'd got word that Arsenal were about to trigger Thomas Partey's release clause. So it's, you can never say never when it comes to the transfer. Like you said, it can be a very reactive thing. A club can approach it thinking we're not going to do anything, then suddenly bang, a deal sort of arises, a phone call happens that changes everything, and they're like, okay, we've got this opportunity, shall we do it? And I think Arsenal will certainly be approaching the window open-minded in terms of, if something does arise that is just too good to turn down and is the right thing to do at the right time, then they'll look to do it. But I don't think they're overly flush when it comes to cash. I think, as we've spoken about before on the show, the David Raya deal and how that was done, I think that says a lot about where Arsenal are at the moment and will be until the end of the season. So I'm not expecting huge amounts to happen. If a big player sale takes place, maybe that would free up a bit of cash that they could do something. I mean, look, just want to hear. I'm just looking at some of the questions we got in. There's one from Arsenal America. Is there any squad concerns for the next month or so? As you said before, especially as we lose players to AFCON and the Asia Cup. And when you look at the squad at the moment, I mean, on paper there, it looks pretty strong. But then obviously you've got to put a big line through Jurrien Timber for certainly the next few months, potentially the season still, despite all the good noises coming out of it about how he's doing. You've got to ease a player like that back into action. You think, look at, I don't know, Vivian Miedemar at the moment. She started last night in the game against Tottenham, but she's been back training for a fair while now. But she's still being eased into games. It's not like as soon as you're back training, that's it. You're going to be playing week in, week out. You're not. You've got to have your load managed. You've got, it's such a significant injury. So, you can basically put a line through Jurrien Timber at the moment. Cedric Suarez, a January move could well happen. There's
Christmas is coming when Cedric is linked with an unnamed Turkish club, don't you?
Yeah, there is, but apparently there is, and then Villarreal interest is there. I've seen that reported today, and I've heard exactly the same when it comes to Villarreal potentially being doing something in January for Cedric Suarez, and that he's open to it, and that Arsenal are open to it. So you could potentially be losing someone like Cedric Suarez as well, who, although he's not playing much, he's still an experienced body in the squad.
Yeah.
So when you
I can't believe I'm about to make this case, but can Arsenal afford to lose Cedric Suarez?
Well, that's why I was saying, and we'll get onto this, that I didn't understand why he started. If that is the case, and that's what I've been told, that Arsenal are open to him going in January, then what was the point of starting him and not Raul Walters at the weekend? But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But when you look at that squad in front of you there, and you look at the players who potentially at the moment aren't available and who could be going away for the international tournaments we've just spoken about, do you have concerns that can get Arsenal through and over the second half of the season if they go deep into the Champions League and, as we all hope, push for this Premier League title?
I'd be worried at fullback because you've got, 3 right backs in Timber, Tomiyasu and Partey just not available at all. So it's pretty much all on Ben White and, whatever they do with Cedric. But what games are they going to play Cedric in beyond sort of third round of the FA Cup? Wish I can't because it's against Liverpool. I mean, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the sort of, that's an immediate concern that you would say there's a case to be made for using the loan market or picking up a experienced veteran who can come straight into the team and just plug gaps for a few months. That interesting, because obviously with all these calculuses, it's not like you're in Timber, Tomiyasu and Partey are never going to play for Arsenal again. So it's not quite the same as if someone leaves. And the last thing you want to leave yourself with is a squad like Arteta inherited, where there are all these quick fixes. There are all these Pablo Maris and Socrateses in the squad because Arsenal needed a centre-back or a defender there and then. So that, and I know that Arsenal are really conscious of not letting this squad bloat by plugging gaps. There's that. And I still think, and I felt it even after Reece Nelson's really good performance, and we could talk a bit about Nelson, it just, the squad feels a little lacking in pace behind Saka and Martinelli. And if Arteta doesn't trust Nelson to come on in big games like Villa, then he needs to find someone else that can alleviate the load on that. I don't see that being something that gets addressed, but I do think it's something that needs to be addressed as soon as January. I think it could be, Trossard didn't win Arsenal the title, but it's very easy to see how I see a world where having Trossard around might have won Arsenal the title. And if I'm Arteta talking to the Cronkies, I do think I can make a similar case for get me one more winger, one more wide forward, and I can win the league.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I do. It's the FFP thing, so I think they can talk to Kroenke all they like, but I mean, we don't know the ins and outs of exactly where Arsenal are in their accountings over the sort of the period that they need to be and where they need to be in terms of where the line is. But it feels like they're pretty close to it. So as much as they can talk to the Cronkies all they like, I do wonder if that's what's going to hold them back in that regards when it comes to January. I mean, I look at that squad and I do have concerns over defence. We don't know how long Tommy's out for. Mikel sort of just did what he usually do it last week when he said it was weeks, didn't he? But it didn't sound great for Tommy. And then he could, if he does get fit, then he's going to be suddenly heading off to the Asian Cup as well. I mean, so you might be, mid-February at best for Tomiyasu. I do feel I think if they're going to do anything or they need to do something, I do think they need another defender. And
it has to be done on January the 1st then as well, doesn't it? There's no point leaving it late. Otherwise, you're not actually getting much use out of him.
No, that is very true. That is very true. If you leave until the end of January, then Tommy could potentially be back in a couple of weeks after that. But that's where my big worry is. I think a lot in terms of the midfield, a lot depends on Thomas Partey as well. How he is. Can he stay fit when he comes back? I think the midfield has probably just about got enough to get through, unless disaster strikes and you pick up another couple of injuries. Smith Rowe can stay fit. It was so good to see him back in midweek. If he can stay fit, I think that'll be a big boost for Arsenal over the second half of the season as well. Kai Havertz is looking far better than he has done, and big bonus going into the second half of the season as well. But I do worry defensively. The fact that Arsenal had to play, or Mikel felt he had to play Saliba and Gabriel next to each other in that PSV game is that should send warning signals. I think that they are very. I was listening to Postecoglou just now. He was doing his press conference and he was talking about his centre backs, and he said that they need to sign in January. They need to sign someone in January because they're one injury away from, being in all sorts of problems. And I kind of look at Arsenal and think they're in a very similar position there. So yeah, if I'm looking at where
it's not quite, without wishing to sound all that, it's not quite that bad, mate. You can keep buggering on, whereas Spurs is that's a clown car of a defence when if Romero goes down. It's not.
But Arsenal had to play Declan Rice, move Declan Rice in centre back against PSV. I mean, that
Yeah,
it's
we
not.
could talk.
That's not what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
Mikel said, "Oh, that's something I had to look at because it's something we might have to do because of how light we are." And again, you don't want to be moving Declan Rice as good as he is, and he can play there. You don't want him there, do you? You want him in his best position. And it is a concern. So yeah, that's where I am with the squad. I mean, you look at who could come in. That's a whole nother thing. I'm not going to start just throwing names around because it's all speculation at the moment. There's nothing that I've heard in terms of it. Like you said this time last year, we all knew Mudryk was absolutely a target, and then they were pushing for him by this point, and I think they'd already actually bid for him by this point. That's not.
It did help us no end that Mykhailo Mudryk was sort of like waging one of the most blatant, like, come and sign me. You know,
He did. Did you see
it wouldn't
Ivan
have been
Toney's
more.
tweet the other day? Ivan Toney tweeting, not tweet, his Instagram. He tweeted he Instagrammed a picture of himself watching Arsenal. Someone scored a goal or did something, and he tagged them in the thing, and he was watching Arsenal, and it just immediately gave me Mudryk flashbacks. It was like, oh, God, we know we're going to start having this again. But yeah, I think it wasn't quite so blatant as what Mudryk was doing last year, which was that was pretty funny.
It's much better than the banter years, the lean years where Arsenal were begging good players to come rather than good players begging to come to Arsenal.
Yeah, I think that does say a lot. But so yeah, I think that's where we are for sort of January plans. I just the word that I've had is not to expect anything groundbreaking, but again, you kind of have to take that with a pinch of salt, don't you? And we'll have to see how it goes. I know Mikel will be pushing for it if he possibly can. I mean, you know what he's like, you know his character.
Oh yeah.
He will not be just accepting that this is his squad through to the end of the season. If he can convince the owners and there is scope for them to do it, then he will be pushing for them to do that. And that is 100% for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and we have to say as well on the transfer front, if Mikel Arteta ever looks for a future career, I can see something great in the plumbing trade for him because this guy hates leaks. He really does.
I got one. I was just looking at some of these questions. I got one from West Suburban AFC. He says, if you could spend whatever cash we'll have available in January on one position, centre mid, striker, versatile forward or defender, which position are you buying?
Well, I suppose I'm not buying, and I'll put it all into the loan of a versatile defender.
No, that's not the question.
Am I spending?
You could spend whatever cash we'll have available in January.
That's like pennies, isn't it?
Oh, that is true. That's true.
Pennies,
I suppose. Yeah, I'm reading that again. I think he's being quite realistic there, where he's saying whatever we've got available, but we don't know what we've got available, so it's quite hard to answer that. But okay, say there's 30 million pounds available, and I'm just pulling that figure out of my head right now. So yeah, 30 million, and you could sign a centre midfielder, striker, versatile forward, or defender. Which position are you buying? I'm buying a defender. I have to say, as I've said when I was talking about the squad, and I think that's where the money needs to get spent if there is any money.
Look, you know what I think about this guy. I'm doing 2 and 1, and I'll do a name. I'll go get Jeremy Frimpong, then I get my versatile forward and my defender in one player. I don't think 30 million would cover, but if I have to sell someone to make that happen, maybe I would.
Right, we shall see. Okay, let's talk about the Champions League now, shall we? Move on to the Champions League, and Arsenal safely through, unlike 2 other English clubs, to the knockout stages of the Champions League. And the draw will take place on Monday. Arsenal potentially could face PSG, Copenhagen, Inter Milan, Porto, Lazio, Leipzig, or Napoli. I think that the number crunchers doing their percentages, the team with the highest percentage of them facing is Leipzig. I believe.
Yes, but by quite a fine margin.
Yeah, it's very, very tight. So we shall see on that. First of all, before we get on to looking at the knockout stages, how do you assess Arsenal's group stage campaign, their first one back since whatever it was, 2016, 2017?
I thought it was really impressive, especially at home. I know it's not like, the European Cup of old we were talking about where, you should win every home game and lose every away game. But it is harder on the road, especially when you're going to places like Lens and it's the first Champions League tie there in a generation, I think you have to accept that that atmosphere is going to spook you. I thought Arsenal dealt with it really professionally. And I think the thing you would say is, yes, it's a bit of a Europa League group, but if Arsenal are a serious contender, oh yeah. If Arsenal are a serious contender, they meet the teams that are a bit Europa League and they largely smash them, especially at home. And that's what they did. So, as far as I'm concerned, you have Man City, top of the tree. Then I would say, maybe Bayern are a little bit clear of the rest. And then Arsenal are so comfortably in the group of teams that could win the Champions League.
Mm-hmm.
Parentheses, if something goes wrong for City.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of people overlooked how impressive Arsenal's run through was just because of the group. Like I said, United had Bayern Munich in there, the giant, but then they had Galatasaray and Copenhagen, and they struggled. Arsenal could easily have struggled in this group, but they didn't because they were very, very impressive, as you said, at home. They conceded a goal at home? Did they?
No,
didn't concede a goal at home. Scored 6 against Lens, 4 against PSV, 2 against Sevilla. I mean, you don't get much better than that in your 3 home games. Obviously, had the slip up away at Lens in the first game, but I still look at that as a game they really shouldn't have lost. It was 2 brilliant goals from Lens, and Arsenal missed some big chances in that game. Went to Sevilla, got a really impressive win, and I thought they did what they needed to do against PSV on Tuesday night, which I thought was a decent performance from a much changed team. So I think they've been really, really good. And it's been a long time since they've been in it. And you could have gone into that. And you never know quite how players are going to react. I think going into the Champions League, it is a different environment. Can they deal with the pressure of it, the extra spotlight? And they've done it really, really well. It was very professional. And, Mikel Arteta understandably very delighted with it. And I think he should be. And it was a really good showing from Arsenal. And then you look at that first, the teams they could potentially play in the first knockout round. There's nothing to fear there. Even PSG, of course, who are the biggest of the lot, you'd think. There's nothing to fear there. And there's not many, as you said, to fear in the other pot as well of group winners. There's, yes, if you're going to win it, you're going to have to get past Manchester City, you would think, at some point, unless someone else does you a favour and does it. And you've got Real Madrid, who, is just a different animal when it comes to European football in the Champions League. But even so, it sounds mad to say it, but I do genuinely think Arsenal have a realistic chance of having a really good shot at this competition. If they'll need a bit of luck, of course they will, and they'll need to have pretty much everyone fit when it comes to the business end of the season. But there's no reason why they can't win this Champions League, is there?
Absolutely none whatsoever. I mean, like you say, luck of the draw, but then you've got Inter Milan in that pot there, and I think that's the team I would probably least want to draw.
Yeah,
but
I agree. I think
I'm going to ask you a question on that after. That Inter Milan team of last season was a very good team, but I don't think it was better than Arsenal, and it got a good draw. And suddenly, with that, they were, 90 minutes away from winning it, and we all know what can happen between any two teams in 90 minutes, especially if Arsenal
won. They were unlucky to lose a final, Inter Milan.
They were. Yeah. Right. So I'll do mine after. But who in those 8 do you want to draw from a footballing perspective? Who do you want to draw? If you're going to do the away day, and who do you want to avoid? That can also be, but I think that's pretty.
Well, I want to draw Copenhagen. I think, because I just think it'd be a brilliant trip. Yeah. Copenhagen holds good and bad memories. I was there in the UEFA Cup final in whatever year that was when we lost to Galatasaray on penalties. I was there for that. I wasn't there for Parma in '95, or '94. But so it's good and bad memories. There's huge Arsenal fan base in Denmark as well. So and it'd be a really special occasion, that one. I just think that'd be a great draw. I absolutely don't want to draw PSG from just loads of points of view. I just think it's a horrible place to go and play football. For fans, it's dreadful. Traveling fans, it's dreadful. So no, I wouldn't like that. Napoli done that fairly recently. Porto, I think, would be a good trip. I think for me personally, Inter Milan, I wouldn't like from a football point of view, but I've never been to the San Siro, and it's one of my favourite football grounds in the world. And they're leaving the San Siro at some point
in theory,
soon. Yeah. And I would do everything to go to that game if Arsenal get into Milan, just to tick what is definitely something on my bucket list off. So, yeah, I think I would probably say Copenhagen for just purely football and journalistic reasons. But Inter Milan would be a very close second, although I think that would probably be the most difficult game. Well,
I think so.
joint with
They look
PSG.
really good in Serie A.
Yeah, they're having a really good season. They're looking very, very strong. I still look at that team now and think that Arsenal should take them over two legs. PSG, I don't know what to expect from PSG because they've been bad a lot of times, and I've seen them a few times this season, and every time I've seen them, they've been bad. But
Rubbish.
they do, they've got match winners in that team who can turn it on and take a game away from you in a very short amount of time if they perform. And they do seem to be getting a little bit better as well. There seems to be signs that they're improving. So come February, March, they might be much better as well. So yeah, I'd rather avoid PSG. I have to say, and go with one of the other lot. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, obviously, I'm quite anti getting PSG and Inter Milan because I have very talented colleagues in Paris and Milan. So there's no trip there from a work perspective. I think Copenhagen would be. I mean, let's be honest, it'd be a very fun one, professionally and personally, wouldn't it? Leipzig, I feel like, could be quite a good matchup for Arsenal in terms of a team that I think they could control quite well. Porto. Yeah, I don't think Porto. I mean, obviously, for work, I've seen quite a lot of Champions League football. I didn't think Porto were all that. Lazio are rubbish, frankly. I don't know how on earth they got through, and I can't wait for you to click that up when they knock Arsenal out in the round of 16.
Yeah, Leipzig would be an interesting one. I think Leipzig would be quite
not like top on your tourist bucket list, though, is it?
No, it's not. It's not.
Apologies to our viewers in Leipzig.
Yeah,
whoever you are.
I don't want Lazio. I have to say again. I just think for travelling fans, that's just not going to be that fun a trip going over there. And
Guendouzi back at the Emirates, though.
Of course, yeah, I forgot Guendouzi's there. Actually, I saw him.
If that happens, I'm running to him with open arms. I love that player.
I watched a bit of their game with Celtic the other day. The one when they got a couple of late goals and won it, 2-0, whatever it was. And
yeah, he was really good that game.
I saw Guendouzi. He was involved in one of the goals there, and I was like, God, yeah, I forgot he was over in Lazio now. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Monday's a draw. Going to be very exciting. The fact that Arsenal are in it, and yeah, looking forward to that. Hopefully, we get a good trip. Second game's at the Emirates, isn't it? Of course.
Yeah, which is a big plus. It's a big plus.
Yeah, it is a big plus. It is a big plus. So cool. Right. So talking about Champions League and the game in midweek, PSV game. Now this is, I did a bit on this yesterday in my show after the PSV game, and got so many questions and comments. Very divisive subject, I think. Some people agree with me. I just said basically it was a missed opportunity. And look, Mikel Arteta is the manager. He's absolutely manager. He can do whatever he wants, and he's far more qualified than me, you, anyone else to do that, of course. And he can play who he wants, and it doesn't matter what anyone else says. And all I was saying yesterday was I felt it was a missed opportunity, not to play all three of them, not to start them or anything like that necessarily, although I do think he should have started Walters over Cedric, as well as I thought Cedric played pretty well. But the fact that Cedric could potentially go in January and Arsenal are open to let him go, which is what I have been told, just makes you think, well, why? Just what good do you get out of playing Cedric against PSV rather than playing Walters there? And even if Walters really, really struggles, it's still a big moment for him. And you've got to, at some point, give these players a chance to sink or swim. And if you're not going to do it in that game, the most dead of dead rubbers, then when are you going to do it? And so I just felt like it was a missed opportunity. It's like throwing Gabriel Jesus on for the last 5 minutes. What do you get out of that? Seriously, what does Jesus get out of that? What do Arsenal get out of that? And if you'd have put Nwaneri on for those few minutes, you get so much more. What it would mean to him, what it would mean to everyone at Hale End watching, to the youth coaches who have worked on Nwaneri watching. I just think it means an awful lot more. So I felt like it was a missed opportunity. I'm not sitting here criticising Arteta for it. It's just my opinion that it was a bit of a missed opportunity for him. And I mean, what did you think? I wasn't surprised, I have to say, but what did you think on it?
Yeah, I certainly would agree that it did feel like you'd let something be wasted. The things I would sort of say Arteta got right, I actually, once it became apparent that Rice was dropping into centre back, I really liked that, because like Arteta said, and I know it won't ever be the plan, but a game might come along, or even a passage of a game where you got to put you got to put Rice in at centre back, and it helps to know what you're getting there. So I thought all power on that. Great to see Emile Smith Rowe, and that leaves 3 substitutes. And then I would have maybe made those changes fairly early on, Rice and Smith Rowe, but then the rest were totally unnecessary. And like you say, it's a special moment for these academy guys. I know it's sort of the case that you're going to have to work harder if you're sort of carrying 3 youngsters who don't know the system, don't know their positioning quite as well, are going to learn through playing. But if you make the right substitutions, take off the right players who, and you just manage fitness, which is part of your job, I don't think it would have sort of put too much extra load on the players that were still on the pitch. And I thought it was a real special moment wasted. But what I don't have truck with, and this is AFC Addy mentioned this, but he certainly wasn't the only one, is this idea that Arteta sort of has an inability to give youngsters a chance. He says, I don't recall him integrating any youngsters into our first team. Emery was the one who gave players like Saka and Martinelli a chance, because we have to be really clear here that Unai Emery will never tire of telling anyone that he gave Bukayo Saka his Arsenal debut. But that's not what Mikel Arteta did with Martinelli, Saka, all those players. He built a team around them. Just because they sort of happened to, Eddie Nketiah made his debut under Arsene Wenger. It doesn't mean that Arsene Wenger is the one that's responsible for giving him the role he has. Arteta has built a squad around young players, some of them from the academy, some of them not. We also have to say, and this comes back to what we were saying at the top, this is a really special group of talented young players from Hale End. Pep Guardiola's given more than 20 youngsters from the City Academy debuts. 2 of them in his time there have established themselves as first team, as Lewis and Foden. It's always going to be a little bit of happenstance. Arteta is a manager who gives youngsters chances because he happened to take over at a time where Arsenal had the best crop of young players since George Graham built a sort of title-winning team out of them. But let's not say that Arteta doesn't rate youngsters. He just is maybe sometimes lets opportunities to just give them a special moment over 5 minutes, slip him by.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he has missed some opportunities to do that. But yeah, I think the sort of the argument that he doesn't rate youngsters or doesn't want to use youngsters is rubbish. And I think that evidence shows that that's rubbish, because like you said, he's built a team around youngsters and he's developed those youngsters. Yes, Emery gave them their debut in terms of Smith Rowe, and did Wenger give who gave Smith Rowe his debut?
Emery gave Smith Rowe,
and
Wenger gave Nelson and Nketiah and
yeah.
Willock their debuts, and Maitland-Niles, who we all forget.
But those players although their debuts were given by those managers, they were developed and turned into these superstars that they are now in terms of Saka and Martinelli anyway, under Arteta, who certainly gave them their chance and improve them, So yeah, I don't buy into that argument that he doesn't give them a chance, but I do think he seems very reluctant to, at the moment, throw some players in to give them a debut. And you shouldn't be giving players debuts just for the sake of it. Of course you shouldn't, but there are opportunities to blood some players, and I did feel like this was a really big one missed. And it's just that question, isn't it? If not now, when? And there will never be a better chance to do it than Tuesday night, because, as I said, that was the most dead of dead rubbers. And obviously every game means something. There was 2.5 million on the line or whatever it was for prize money. So, for a club that is important. You've got coefficiency ratings and points and all that sort of stuff on the line, of course. But
1.8 million, baby, that they could have had.
But I mean, look, we saw what Man City did yesterday in their game. They gave some youngsters a chance, and the youngsters seized those opportunities and scored. So, I was a bit disappointed after the game. I have to say, I just felt like that was an opportunity for Arteta that he didn't take. And I mean, there's some comments here from people. Ross says, thoughts on the other big 6 clubs playing academy kids and Arsenal not? Does this start to trickle down effect and show them there might not be a way to the first team? Understand Arteta wanting to win every match, but developing young players is important for future sales. I mean, I think that's a key thing as well, isn't it? That in terms of academy kids. It's not all about breaking through into the first team and becoming the next Saka and becoming the next Smith Rowe or Nelson. It's also for potential sales and getting value up for players as well, which is very important when it comes to the academy. It's such a key part of the business.
But I think nowadays kids are smart enough to understand that there can be a good environment to develop in, even if the end of the pathway isn't the first team. Like, take Brooke Norton-Cuffy. I don't know if he'll ever be a sort of first team regular. If you ask me to bet now, I'd say no.
Yeah.
But Arsenal, managed his development pretty shrewdly. I mean, Joe Willock, Ainsley Maitland-Niles as well. These guys have, they haven't made it at Arsenal, but I don't think, the best parents, the best agents that work with young players will be telling their kids, there are environments that allow you to hone your development. And I still think Hale End is, and everything I hear is that Hale End is still considered one of the best environments to do that. And that doesn't change. We have to say that doesn't change if Raul Walters plays 10 minutes or 0 minutes. It's still a good place to be a young footballer.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. But you just think what it would have meant to those people back at Hale End seeing new players come through, because obviously Saka and Smith Rowe and everyone, they're the poster boys. They have been for a good few years now. But we're yet to see the next guys. Obviously, Charles Sago Jr. got his chance against Brentford, which was good. But it would have been great to see one of them come on in the Champions League, I have to say. And when I was watching that Man City game yesterday and seeing them take their opportunity like they did for City, you're just like, that would have been nice to have seen it with an Arsenal player. But look, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge issue. And as I said, I'm not going to absolutely hammer Arteta for it. It's his choice. He's a manager, and he knows far more than us. He sees these players ins and out at training and everything like that. And he said after the game he didn't feel it was right for them. And if he's saying that, then who are you to really question? But that's I did think it was a little bit of an opportunity missed. Right, so look, let's move on to Brighton now, shall we? And bogey team for Arsenal at the Emirates, Brighton.
Oh, yeah.
It's going up. I mean, they knocked Arsenal out of the cup last season at the Emirates, the League Cup, didn't they? And then basically ended Arsenal's title charge, although that was basically ended a couple hours earlier when Manchester City won at Everton, and that horrible day. I remember that. Horrible day at the end of last season.
I tell you, if you could sort of time warp this current Everton team, or like if you could have get this Everton team against this Man City team, I'm picking Everton. I love that Everton team right now.
Yes,
so that's a complete sidetrack there.
Yeah, they are doing well. It's a shame they didn't that day. Like Gundogan popping up as he did towards the end of last season with some of those goals he scored. What do you think? What are you expecting from Brighton? I mean, Arsenal obviously going into the back of that defeat against Villa last weekend, which I don't know. I suppose it does put a little bit more pressure on them. They've got Liverpool to come after this as well, of course. So 3 points, really, really important this weekend.
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't be terrified from an Arsenal perspective. And I saw Brighton against Chelsea a few weeks back, and come on, if you're losing to Chelsea,
10 men Chelsea as well.
10 men Chelsea. And that's one of the interesting things. I feel like the XG stuff will tell you that they're still quite a dangerous attack, but it felt to me like they really did struggle to break down defenses, even when they had a lot of the ball. And I think this one is really reflected in the numbers. They are just a little bit weaker defensively, as any team would be when it's sort of lost Levi Colwill, when it's lost Moises Caicedo, of course. They're just not the same team they were last year, and there's no shame in that. They have a really good coach. They play the right way, but they're just a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit more open. I think when Brighton rolled into the Emirates last season, that was sort of the peak version of this team. Caicedo could just bully his way through midfield. The front three looked so dangerous, and of course I would be very Evan Ferguson is going to be a tough ask for Saliba and Gabriel, but it just they can't be that same team again. And the other thing I'd want to highlight is Brighton was so pressed so effectively against Arsenal, and I thought in that game I remember just thinking Arsenal need an out ball, a player they can hit it long to, and they have that in Kai Havertz, who has come on leaps and bounds in the last few weeks and could be a bit of a sort of secret weapon. What are you expecting? Because it's going to be tricky. And we should also say Brighton Brighton have got a big Europa League game as well, so I think they'll be quite tired. What are you expect?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because it's a game they have to win as well. They can't really be resting players, and it's tonight, isn't it, against Marseille because they want to win the
But
group.
he rotates a lot. He
But this is a big game for them because you got to win the group, don't you? Because then you get an extra weekend off. I mean, off 2 midweeks off in February, and you don't have to play a Champions League team, of course, in that draw. So it is a big game for them. I think he'll go full strength for this one tonight. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't.
That's what I mean. I think he might rotate for this game at the Emirates.
What do you think? Oh yeah, that's an interesting.
Thanks very much. I mean, they've gone from being maybe the 4th or 5th best team in England to 7th or 8th, so they will be a tough out. But I think Arsenal have got it in them.
Yeah, obviously, I think Arsenal got it in them, but I've just got so many memories of Brighton rocking up at the Emirates and just playing really, really well. And it goes back, predates De Zerbi as well. It seems like since Potter, the Brighton always just seem to play very well at the Emirates. So I'm expecting a really tough game. I do think Arsenal, should win if they play well. I think they need to win as well. I think the fact that they lost at Villa last week and the fact that they got Anfield next after this one, it puts real added importance on this game. They need to be picking up 3 points to respond well from that defeat at Aston Villa, which I didn't think they played badly at Villa by any means. I didn't think they deserved it. In fact, I think they deserved to win that game, not even draw it. I think they should have won at Aston Villa. I still feel that was a real case of 3 points dropped last weekend, and they need to get back on it. So, and the fact that Arsenal were able to rest pretty much everyone in midweek, and like you said, De Zerbi's going to have to go pretty strong tonight. I'd certainly have Arsenal down as favourites for this one. I mean, team selection wise, it depends what's going on with Martinelli. Obviously, he also didn't travel, but you would hope that he's going to come back into the equation for this one and should be okay to start as long as it wasn't anything more than a cold or a bit sort of fluey. And then I think the team pretty much picks itself for this game. You mentioned Havertz there. I thought he was really good against Aston Villa, Havertz. I thought it was his best game in an Arsenal. It's interesting. Every
week we say this,
I keep saying it's his best game. And that's just a really positive thing, isn't it? That we're suddenly saying, every week at the moment, he's improving and looking better and better. And I thought he really, really did play well in that game against Villa, which is a big, big bonus.
Yeah. And I mean, you can, I think, assuming Martinelli's fit, it's probably the 11. I'm intrigued by I think Adingra is really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be against putting Kivior up against him, but it is a decent rest the other side of this game, isn't there? So get Zinchenko in for this game, I think, and make sure Arsenal are winning it, playing their way. I thought he also had some off moments against Villa, but was maybe less unreliable defensively than we thought he might be given the opposition.
Yeah. What did you make of that Villa game and the performance from Arsenal? I thought they played. It was one of those days they were just not going to score a goal. I thought they played well, but they were just not going to score a goal.
Oh, I'm firmly of the view that Martin Odegaard should never take another shot at Villa Park because
there's just should never play at Villa Park again. You just leave Odegaard at home when Arsenal.
Something in the air there, isn't there, where he will miss sitters. But I mean, that was the game, wasn't it? It was just like a never-ending stream of how are Arsenal going to mess up this opportunity. Like, I don't think we'll see another game this season where Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, Jesus all have it's not bad games. It's just games where it's like there's something up with their wiring. You're like, are you okay? Have you got a head cold or something?
Yeah, they're still usually very, very ruthless. I mean, there's so many opportunities, especially in the first half when they'd win the ball back up high and then they wouldn't even get a shot away because they'd mucked it up. The pass was wrong, or they'd picked the wrong option. It was just one of those days where they were all just off it. They all misfired at the same time, and it was really, really costly because they just needed one or two of them to be on it, and they would have won that game. Villa were there for the taking that on the Saturday night, and it was a real frustration to not even get a point from it. It was like that. The Newcastle game was annoying, but Arsenal didn't really do enough to win that game, even though they ended up losing it. The game against Villa was very, very different. I think that was 3 points drops against Villa, not just 1 point.
It still means that halfway through the season, Arsenal haven't faced a team that's been better than them, and I like that. I like those odds.
Yeah, I said that afterwards. Actually, it was one of the reasons I just wasn't. Obviously, I was disappointed at the result, but I wasn't. It wasn't like you came away going, "Oh, we were terrible then," and Villa did what they did to Manchester City against Arsenal and dominated and everything like that. It was just another game where Arsenal, barely gave the other side a sniff on their turf and created a fair amount themselves, but they just didn't take advantage of it. So it was frustrating, and hopefully they can bounce back from that, because I think they need to, because Anfield is going to be a hell of a test on the 23rd, especially the way Liverpool are playing at the moment. And Arsenal don't want to be losing any more ground on them before that trip.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, right. Let's go through. I'm gonna. I've obviously asked for some questions and comments on Twitter, so I'm gonna go through and pick a couple for you. If you want to do the same as well, we'll end the show with a few questions. Obviously, we've already brought a few of them into the actual show, and we did talk about Hale End briefly, and there was one here from someone who calls themselves just Party. I think it was Lucas Alod. I can't pronounce it. I'll just go with Lucas, and he says. It's on Hale End. So the plan for Hale End products, what could be classified as as a success for the academy? Playing for the first team or selling to raise money?
I mean, both.
Both.
I know that's the thing, but I think we need to sort of maybe reconfigure how valuable like the getting money for a player is, because Alex Iwobi generated Arsenal how much? 30 to 35 million. I never found out which of those clauses got activated in the end. That's an incredible success, because that's 30 to 35 million of free money. That's why Chelsea are thinking about selling their best midfielder, Conor Gallagher. And I said that, and I'm not taking that back. So yeah, both are
Man City with Cole Palmer as well. It's just I think it's essential.
And maybe we underrate that second success. Same with Willett. As long as
I think it's really important. It's really important to sell players from the academy. I think, especially now, it's so hard to sell players, especially outside of the Premier League, because of how much money the players are on, and it just makes it really, really difficult to sell players. So if you can sell an academy product and you get, like you said, just pure profit from that, then it's a key part of the business, I think, and it will continue to be a key part of the business going forward. Obviously, the dream is for them all to come through and play for the first team, but that's never going to happen. And so what you need to develop them well, so that if they're not going to play for Arsenal, they're going to play for someone else, but you're going to get a good amount of money for it. So yeah, I think it's sort of balancing act, isn't it? I think success is definitely playing for the first team, but it's also selling to raise money as well.
Right, I've picked someone that's name is a little easier to read. The Football Talk at Addy2123, and this was addressed to you, so you can answer it. Hi, Charles. In your opinion, what does failure look like for this season? Would you be happy if we don't win anything but finish second or third in the Premier League? Even though there has been a lot of progress this season, there should be pressure on Arteta to win something.
Yeah, would I be happy?
I mean, I think it's interesting what failure is.
Yeah, I wouldn't be happy if they didn't win anything this season, but I don't think it would be a failure if they didn't win anything. It's hard to say anything's a failure at the moment when you're playing up against Manchester City. It's a team that's just won the treble, and yes, they're a little bit off it at the moment, but I think they'll be very much that they're not going to be off it all season. And if you finish second behind Manchester City, then I don't think that's a failure. But if Arsenal finish outside the top four, that's a failure this season. I'd say, that I'd class as a definite failed season. Arsenal have to be challenging for the title this season, and they have to be going deep into the Champions League this season. If they don't manage that, then I think that's a failure, and then I think Arteta will be under pressure. I don't think I don't think that would cost him his job, but I think he'll certainly come under pressure from the fans and from the club because of the amount of money that has been spent. So yeah. But if they finish second behind Man City this season and say got to the semi-finals of the Champions League but didn't win it, I wouldn't look at this season as a failure. I'd look at it as a slight disappointment, because I want to see Arsenal winning a trophy, and I think they're good enough to win a trophy, but I wouldn't say it's a failure.
Yeah, everything you said, really. I wouldn't disagree with a word. Failure is not being around in the Champions League next season. If only Newcastle and Man United could be relied upon, there might even be a bit more of a room for failure there, a bit more of a safety net.
Right, there's one here from Chris. It says, why are there these rumours about Kivior?
It's Italian football transfer reporting. I don't think there's any appetite to let Kivior go. I mean, I would place him in the list of players that. I mean, there are very few players at Arsenal right now where there is not a price that Arsenal would say, okay, thank you. But there's no appetite to sell Kivior, and I'm not aware. It's not to say that there isn't, but I'm not aware of any sort of push from Kivior to go. He seems pretty happy, and he's getting good minutes right now. So there are rumours about Kivior because, I mean, and I suspect the reality is there are rumours in the Italian press about Kivior because a lot of Italian clubs would love to sign him. He's very good.
Yeah, I think he's really good. I really like Kivior. And yeah, obviously there's been consistently linked to AC Milan. Pretty much every other day there's a report from a different Italian or media organisation linking Kivior to Milan. But yeah, I mean, it'd be madness. It'd be utter madness from Arsenal to get rid of Kivior in January. I mean, after everything we've been talking about in this show in terms of the squad and where it could potentially be light, and if they're one injury away from real defensive issues, if you then go and turn around and sell a player who can play centre back and left back and who's getting plenty of minutes for you, it'd just be mad. So yeah, thanks for the question, Chris, but I don't think there's anything necessarily for Arsenal to worry about. The rumours are there. Milan might be interested in him, but I don't think Arsenal are going to even consider the possibility of letting him go.
There's some I've liked. I like this one from Sagar S about why doesn't Arteta play Reece Nelson more? But then he ruined it. And by the end, we were talking about when will Arteta stop his bigger than the club demeanour, which is news to me. So, Sagar, you were close, but you don't get the question, which I'm guessing is our last one probably. Ollie S. And I'm asking you this one because I've just been watching Premier League years 2011 to 2012 to 13, 12 to 13, and Arsenal have just beaten Chelsea 5-2 again. Which player from the 2010s do you think would fix perfectly? I guess fit perfectly into the current squad.
Say that again. Go over that again. Sorry.
Which player from the 2010s do you think would fit perfectly into the current squad?
Santi Cazorla.
Always a good one, isn't it? Yeah, it's quite easy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one else. I mean, when you say 2010s, is that literally from? Are we talking 2010s till the 2020s? That whole decade?
Yeah. Why not? Play fast and loose. I've got quite an unpopular.
I'd still go with Santi Cazorla. I was going to say, well, maybe Alexis, beast mode Alexis Sanchez was just such a monster, and would, he would do anything. He would transform this team. Even though, as much as I like Martinelli, you get Sanchez into this team, but Santi Cazorla, imagine him playing in that left 8 role now. Or anywhere in that midfield, he's just a genius. He deserves better Santi Cazorla than what the teams he sometimes had to play in at Arsenal. If Santi Cazorla was in this team now, Arsenal win the title in my mind.
Imagine Santi Cazorla left 8. One of my favourite ever players.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't think it's not much fun for the listeners if we both just pick Cazorla, even though if I had the first dibs at this, I would pick Cazorla. And I was sort of thinking, for absolutely right this instant, like Bakary Sagna, talk to me. But again, Bakary Sagna, it's great. Everyone likes him. Who cares? You know how we're always talking about how Arsenal need that killer striker? We've always said, the striker, that's maybe what they could upgrade, and someone that could play with Jesus and play instead of Jesus, and 30 goals a season. It's RVP, isn't it?
Yeah, that is very true. I hadn't thought of RVP. Yeah.
It hurts to admit it, but 2011, 2012 Robin van Persie is
unbelievable.
Possibly, one of the great post-Invincibles seasons. Frankly, of any player, not just Arsenal players. Him, Jesus, and Saka as your front three.
Not bad, was it? Not bad, would it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, RVP, like I said, that season he was just unbelievable. And then when he won it, what he went and done at United as well afterwards.
But also, no, I don't want to pick him. No, Sagna
would be nice, but no, I'm sticking with Santi Cazorla as well. There was one I just wanted to talk about here. This is from Aaron. Says just a general question about reporting. Do journalists get more of their info, injuries, transfers from people within the club or those close to the player? And when journalists get info, are you told you aren't allowed to release it until a certain time to protect the club? I love the last bit of that, which seems to be something that a lot of people believe, but just literally couldn't be further from the truth. It's like, have you ever been told not to report something to protect the club?
Oh my God, no! Because they know that the minute
but so many people believe that it's genuinely what happens and is the case, and it's just absolutely 100% not true. It's not true in the slightest, but so many people believe that is the case.
I mean, so people said about the time thing. You may be told something. Arsenal don't do this, but other clubs might tell you something and say put an embargo on it, like, or say because this news we're announcing this news at this time. This is when you. But I mean,
yeah,
for
yeah. You get stuff
starters,
like that, like contract announcements. So sometimes
yeah,
they'll give you a heads up, say this is going out at 10 o'clock. But in the weeks leading up to that, that story's already been broken and reported that so and so is going to sign a new contract. But the actual announcement, when it's done or a transfer's done and going to be announced, sometimes you get a heads up through that relationship with the club of we're going to release this at 10 o'clock. So if you want to get your confirmed story prepared to go at 10 o'clock, that obviously happens. But in terms of actual stories that you get and
if
behind
the
the
club
scenes.
want to protect themselves, then they don't tell journalists.
Mm.
I mean, and I think people misunderstand how often a football club will proactively tell a lot. I mean, it does vary, and I don't want to sort of write hard and fast rules about this, but I think people would misunderstand how often, a football club will go out and proactively tell journalists information that they don't otherwise have or haven't discussed. It can happen, but I think people think, that you got to phrase all this very carefully, haven't you, as you're saying it? But that yeah, it's just not what you think that clubs would sort of say things to us and say, don't report it. If you tell a journalist something, you kind of have to accept and expect that it will end up written down quite soon after. The other part of that question, which I did really like, because I just say it completely varies. Quite often it varies based on the player, where we get our information from. But you have to be able to get information from the club and from within the club and without the club, like agents, players, if you're very good, people in the know. It can come from anywhere. But like I say, the clubs are not like telling us things every day and saying, don't say this, don't report it.
You obviously have relationships with people at the club, and when you do have a story, you'll go to the club sometimes, say, look, I've got this, I'm running this, is there anything you want to add? Do you want to add some is it context behind it? And you will give clubs sometimes heads up if you've got a big story. That's how it works, obviously. But yeah, I've never once, I can honestly say, I've never once ever been told do not write this, or you're going to be in trouble for writing this, or don't write this to protect. It just does not happen. As much as some people want you to believe it does not. Trust me. And yeah, I think that's about where we should leave it now. What are we up to time wise? We're up to over the hour mark, so I think that's a good place to end it. Where are you this weekend? Are you at the Arsenal?
I'm at the Emirates. Looking forward to it. And then I guess got to hurry back because we've got the small matter of Liverpool Man United afterwards.
Indeed, I'm at the Emirates. I'm not in the press box, though. I'm in my seat this weekend, so I shall be there. I don't know what I'm doing afterwards. I might hang around and watch the United game somewhere. I know a few people are going out and watching it.
Could be very funny
around North London. Yeah, United, Liverpool are going to absolutely smash them. They're going to absolutely smash them in that game. United are missing some players as well, aren't they? So yeah, I saw Bruno managed to get himself the weekend off as well, going up to it as every good captain should.
I mean, we could do a whole other hour, couldn't we, on Manchester United? But there is a club with a sort of absolute vacuum of a dressing room, and I'm always very conscious when I have to write about United of sort of not saying, look, Arsenal are the solution here, but whoever takes over the running of that football department should look at what Edu did, expensive and painful as it is, and sort of say, yeah, there are some 27, 28-year-olds here that are sufficiently damaging to this club that it makes more sense to pay them to not play for us than it does to pay them to play for us badly.
Yeah, hopefully they don't do that so we can just continue to laugh at them.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, mate. Have a good one. Good to speak to you. And we'll be back. I wonder if we will squeeze one in next week. I'm going away a week today, so I'm not here for Christmas. But it'd be good to squeeze a show in.
We've got a free midweek, haven't we? For once.
We will talk about that at the start of next week and try and get something done, even if it's something that I put out while we are away. All right, mate. Have a good one. Enjoy the game at the weekend. I'll give you a wave from my seat over the press box.
And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Speak to you soon. Bye, mate.